I'm Shawn Bland at the Art Center of Wilmington Island. We are so glad to offer a way to stay connected and continue creating art. Check out our new list of art at home kits for both kids and adults, available for curbside pickup and mail order. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see the latest options. We will post them as quickly as we can make them. Each kit includes everything you need to complete a beautiful painting at home: a pre-sketched canvas, an inspiration picture, paint, brushes, and a palette, and a link to watch a tutorial to follow along. All you'll need to provide would be paper towels and a rinse cup for brushes. Now that you have all of your supplies, it's time to watch a step-by-step tutorial. Time to paint. Our painting of a magnolia is going to start with our background space being a dark, deep violet. So to do that, we're going to use the violet that we have on our palette, and we're going to add several colors into it as we work. This is the violet basically right out of the tube, and I think that it's so much more interesting if we add other colors to it. So to start with, I'm going to add a little bit of ultramarine on my brush, and you can see how that changes it. I'm going to add a little bit of brown, and you can see how that changes it. And I'm just going to use my brush to mix the colors together right on the canvas. I also would like it to be lighter in some places, so I'm going to add white to it. And as you can see, when I mix that in, how that even changes the lightness of it enough so that you can see the difference between the purple that's dark with the brown in it, and then you can see how you can lighten it up. Now I'm going right along the edge, and I'm not worried too much about a line. I'm going to be able to come back in with my magnolia as I begin to paint it and create that overlap. So with the background, I don't have to worry about it. I'm just using a brush to get and overpaint the line. That way when I come back and paint my magnolia, you can definitely tell that it is painted over and it overlaps the background. But it's a fun, easy way to put the background in by just mixing the colors right on your palette. And that's a different technique that you might not be accustomed to, but it is one that I would like for you to try. Just every once in a while when you need to load your brush, just go over and pick up a different color, and then you can tell, you can see the colors in, but as you blend them, they really look great together behind this white magnolia flower. So you can see here I'm picking up a little bit more violet. I had a little bit more ultramarine there. I'm picking up a little bit more brown and making it a little bit darker in the corner. And as I go around adding more blue, picking up a little bit more, even brown and white together with the purple is a real good look for this painting. When I get close to the edges, if I want to keep a line, I can turn my brush on its side and just lay it down. It's not an exact edge because we don't need one, but it is getting all the way over to the edge of the magnolia bloom, so that way we do not have to worry about having any blank spaces. The overpainting with the petals are going to take care of all of that. Now as I go around the corner, I'm doing the same thing to this space, making sure that the corners are a little bit darker, adding more brown and blue together with that ultramarine blue. It's very deep and very dark. As I move around to the spaces on the sides where I have the petals, I have to be a little bit more careful because I want to make sure that I get those spaces filled in right along the edge. And of course we have run off the page here, which is an important element for our painting, so that we'll be able to have the image not fit right in the center of the page. It is off center somewhat. So that's the way we have the composition set up. Okay, so as I look, I like all the background space area. It's all filled in nicely, so I'm gonna begin on the balloon itself. I'm gonna actually start with the balloon that is the furthest away and do the inside part of it and then move out toward the outside of the petal. I'm gonna start with the same color that's on my brush, so I'm not gonna wash it. I'm just going to pick up a little bit a little bit extra white, and then I'm gonna come in this area where I can see a petal. So this will be the first one that I look at and I'm gonna do a little underpainting so that I can show you really a mapping of where everything is, and then it'll be real easy for you to identify the individual petals. I picked up as I said, the same background color that I was using, the violet. Has a little blue in it, a little of the brown. Put that in first, and then I am coming in and adding more white to it. And I'm doing this pretty much in a streaky fashion. I'm not doing too much blending right now. I'm just laying down the paint and spreading it out with the full width of the brush. So that way you can see the individual streaks that are in the petal. Now, as I go from the outside of the bloom toward the inside of the flower, you can see I've gone from lighter to medium to darker. Now, that is the underside. The petal is going to flip out, and the side over here is the light side, so that will be put on next. I do like the blue that is different than the ultramarine. It's the cerulean blue. I like that color put in. It's a contrast between the warm and the cool blue that I think is nice in this picture. So I'm adding a little bit of cerulean that I will just put in from time to time on the petals. I have added a little bit of white to it, and you can see I'm getting just a few little brush strokes of that color going in. And I paint it the same way that that bloom actually is made. It goes inward toward the center. Then I'm going to move on. I'm going to move to the next bloom that's right up underneath it, and I'm going to lay that in. I'm actually going to start with the darker color so that I can see where the line is. I can see that this is a shadow up underneath, and that I also have a little bit of a dark color that's right in that area, coming right off from the edge where it's scooped out just a little bit. And then we have this area that's almost like a C shape, and it is also a little bit darker. So with the brush, I'm just finding the areas that I need to show the cupping or that inside part that's a little bit darker. So that's the area that I'm making now. And then I'll change over and we'll do even a lighter color, and then we'll actually set in that cerulean blue on the top side of that. But before that, I am going to go and just add more of the white to the flower. I'm going to come in like this, and I'm just literally setting up the space where more of the light is hitting, and that you can see that bloom. You can see the light hitting it in that area, so there's a good bit more of the white added to that space. If it's really a lot wider, I'm going to wait and do that towards the end, but if it has any of the violet or blue color in it, I'll go ahead and blend that in now. I'm just taking the light color, as you can see, and going right up to the dark color that I put in. So now I'm gonna come in, and where the cerulean blue comes in, it really adds, you can see how when you add that color, how it just makes it pop right out against the rest of the edge that has the darker blue and the violet in it. So that's a very important contrast of blues to play up in that area. So I'll make sure each time that we get that blue put in. Now as this bloom has overlapping areas, you'll see that all the darker areas that are underneath this middle section tend to be darker all the way around this middle section. So I'm going to go ahead and establish that area now with this brush. I'm going all the way around the area that's going to be the center. And this is a violet color, but it does have some of the brown in it, so it's not too bright. But I'm using just the brush and really just sort of edging the color in right over the yellow drawing line that you can see. And that way, as you begin to look at the flower, you can see that this part goes on the inside and then it rounds out. So that gives us depth that the flower is going to need. Now I can continue on over here. Since I have that set up, I'm going to go back to the violet and the white again. So basically this is violet. It has a little bit of the white in it. It doesn't have the brown in it yet, but we can add that whenever we need it to look duller or darker, sometimes both. So as I'm coming down in here with the dark color, then immediately I go ahead and start adding the light color to it. And you can see that this has a shape in here that's important for showing what that petal is actually doing, how it actually bends and cups. So this is darker along this edge where that petal meets the next petal. It's darker here. But then suddenly all of this area, you have a shape that's lighter. So I'm just picking up more white now here along the edge and adding that. Now remember, the lightest part of the flower where it's white, we will actually go in and put white right on top, but we're gonna reserve that for a little while. We're just going in and setting up this space first so that you can tell how this petal comes out differently than the others. They each have their own little different curve. So you can see how this one goes around and then this one. So actually move those brush strokes around and let it help you make visual it helps you make the visual path that we can actually see with our eyes and how that bloom is actually opened in that direction. So you can see I use the brush. I'm going around this way, I'm going around, I'm going around. This is going down. So my brushes actually are, my brush strokes, every one of them are so important in establishing this picture. When you're doing a close-up like this and you can see every brush stroke that you make, every one of them are essential. I'm going to go back now to the blue color that I was working on, the cerulean blue. Put a little bit more in this area, and then I'm actually going to go behind this bloom that I'm working on now and put a little bit more of the color, and you can see how all of a sudden that petal now really pops out against that petal. And it's all about the contrast and how they're set up against each other. So that's important for that space. Okay, so now we're going to continue on. We're going to go in and make this petal up underneath this petal. So I just had some of the blue on my brush, so I'm going to continue to have that. I just had that blue on my brush, but I'm going to continue to use, when I go over to my palette, I'm picking up the purples that I already had mixed for all the others. I'm going around and I'm setting up all that darker space first. And then I'm not, if you look at the palette, you can tell what's happening is that as I go in and paint, I'm using a little bit of each one of the colors. There's the violet and the ultramarine blue. So I don't mix up just one pile of the color. I go in and change it every time I go over and get a new brush stroke of color. And that just adds so much interest to your painting, so that every stroke has a different color and sometimes a different motion as you change which direction the brush stroke is going. So I'm adding now a combination of the cerulean blue and the ultramarine blue, and I'm really setting up that space up inside that petal, and that will really add drama to that space. I'm doing the same thing down in this area where it's gonna cup up. I'm putting the violet and the blue together. I'm really emphasizing that space so that I can come around and make that overlap. So this is the part that's actually underneath, and this petal's shape is gonna overlap in that area. And now I'm gonna come with my brush and see how I'm just tying that together. I'm using all of my brush strokes just to go from the outside to the inside. I'm gonna continue going all the way around in all the space the same way. So I'm picking up a little bit more of the cerulean blue. I'm coming in, I'm going up underneath, setting that space up so that that part of the flower can overlap this inside part. And then I just blend from the outside to the inside, from the outside to the inside. And then I make sure that I have a darker color right up underneath. I'm just using the toe of the brush just a little bit to go around the edge and make a definite edge. Remember, the white's gonna go right on top of it later, but we want this to all be filled in up underneath. So as we go from outside to inside, both directions, you can see we established that in the center, and that works nice for that cupping that needs to happen on every petal. Okay, so this is gonna be mostly light, so I'll hold up on that a minute. I'm gonna go in and actually build what's gonna happen on how this petal cuts toward the inside. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna make the shape with the toe of the brush so that you can see it. It's almost like a heart shape that goes in right around this area. So that means that we're gonna come in on this side and make it a lighter area as soon as we get the dark made. So the dark goes along the edge, and then the lighter one comes immediately after it to blend out, to show that it is a soft edge or blend. And then immediately we pick up white and add it. So if you do that while the acrylic is wet, you can see that you can definitely get a blend, and you just let each one of those brush strokes go overlapping and all go towards the center of where the flower petal actually comes from. So of course it's coming from the center of the flower and it's going outward. So I'm going from the outside edge to the inside, from the outside to the inside. And then if you make each one of those go that direction with the top brush stroke, it really gives the viewer the opportunity to see that. Now behind that, so we have more of the purple color, so I'm gonna take the violet. This is a little bit brighter, so I'm just adding a little bit of the violet to the brush, and I'm not putting any of the dark colors in it right now. I'm just letting this really be bright at first, and then I'll blend it out a little bit to tie it in with everything else, but I want it to really have some color. So this is a fun way to do it, is just to go in and put it without any of the blues. That's just the deep violet with a little bit of white in it. It doesn't have any brown or any of the blue in it. Now, as I move out and go around to finish up this petal, I'm gonna add a little bit more of the white to lighten it up. And I'll add a little bit more of the blue so I can tie it together with what we already have out on this side. So now this gives us the underside of this flower, and then it'll be real easy for us to come in and put the overlap of that white cap that goes right across on the edge of that one. So I'll give you a little preview of how that's gonna look in just a second, because it's hard to wait and not show you what they're gonna look like. But I'm gonna go across to the other side with the same color that's on my brush, and I'm gonna go in and fill in that space, and we'll do pretty much both of these at the same time. So it is violet. I am putting a little bit of the ultramarine or the darker blue in it. I'm not mixing them together. I am keeping them sort of separate on my brush, and that way I can come in when I'm making my brush strokes, go back and forth like this. I do want them to go in that direction, back and forth like that, because I want every line to be visible. I want you to actually see them. And the only way you can do that is to stroke them together while they're wet and just let them come right out of the center of the flower. Now I've picked up a little bit of the cerulean, and I'm going right out of the center, and I really play up on the blues against the violets. I can put a little bit more of that in here now. But you can see that once you're putting the whites in and all of the colors, when you're mixing those together, that it's fun to play back and forth between the petals. Maybe if I put a little purple here, then I would add a little purple there, or maybe I'll add a little light here and a little light over here. And that way, every time that you put a line in, a brush stroke of color, you're identifying a little bit more of the detail that actually makes the magnolia look like a magnolia. That we also need to tie that together with this space, even though it's darker and it has more of the blue in it. We do have to come back and begin adding some of the same purple that we have throughout the rest of the flower. So you don't really do one petal independently of another. Once you get them to this state, then you can start working them all together. So I'm gonna, like I said, give you a little peek into what's gonna happen with the white, and then we'll come back and get some more of the underpaintings done from the center out. But right now I'm just gonna wipe off my brush. I think it's important sometimes to get a feel for what's going on overall generally before you finish up too much, so you can make sure that you're on the right track. So now I'm just going and basically getting white on my brush, and I wanna go through and I want it to be really light in this area. Basically there's not gonna be much of a color in there except the white, but it does allow me to clean up the edges. Remember when we were talking earlier, I said that if you didn't have a clean edge, it was okay, because you'd get a chance to clean it up with your outside edge, and that's certainly what you can do now. But now I'm adding in just a little bit. This is the opposite. This is starting out with white and then adding a little bit of color to it, where before I basically started out with the color and then added just a smidgen of white to it. So this is mostly white. It does have a little bit of color variations in it, so it ties the painting together. But you can see how this swivels this way and this swivels this way. That's very important to get those brush strokes in that way. So that's the way I'm painting it. When you get to the place where this is gonna overlap that, I like to pick up a little bit more paint on my brush, load it with a little more paint, and then just lay it down full body where I want it to go, and really let the brush make the edge for me. So I'm gonna do that all the way around this area. I'm just gonna use the toe of the brush to come around and form the edge of the flower. Sometimes I'm adding more blue, and sometimes I'm adding a little bit of the violet. But as long as you've got them both in there, that's fine. make this have a contour, make the brush strokes roll with the flow of the outline edge. I'm doing the same thing around this edge. I'm picking up the brush, just going around the edge, using the toe of it to make the edge of the flower. If your brush isn't flowing as smooth as you want it to, if you'll dip it in the water and then lay the water brushed down into the paint and just push the water and the paint together in the brush and flatten it out, you can get a nice, even, nice edge, and it flows, and it'll be just as thin and as fine as you want it to. I don't usually like to add much water to the brush, but in this case where you need something to flow, you can always pick up just a little bit of your medium. In this case, it's the water, to just barely make the paint flow a little bit, because after it sits out on the palette, it does dry out a little bit. I'm making sure that this is dark enough in this corner, and it's dark enough in here where it turns around in the corner. And then I'm going up into this corner. There are corners everywhere in that particular layout. But you can see basically it's darker here, and then it stays light right here in the center. So that's what's gonna happen. I'll show you the other ones that we've done. I'm just putting my brush in the water once again, going over, picking up the white, and then I'm going to come in and go around the edge and literally just make the overlapping of the flower where it flips out. And you can see, as long as I have the right flow and the right amount of paint on the brush, it just lays on. And you basically do one mark and it's finished. The same thing is gonna happen here. I've dipped my brush in the water, I go over, really take a few minutes to dip your paint in the white paint and just go over and really push the water into the paint, push it into the brush, and then once you have a nice amount of fluid paint on your brush, then it will flow and go where you want it to. When you need to do something in detail like this, I'm actually gonna choke up on my brush a little bit more so I can control where it's going, and I'm going right along the edge. And once again, I just make a circle so that this comes out, and then I'll do the same thing where it comes on the inside. I'll come back. Now, I like to turn my canvas if I need to come around and go around on this side. It makes it easier than going backhanded up against the edge. So really turn your canvas around if you need to make that easier for you to put your paint on. We've got another overlap here, so I'm coming in with the brush. I dipped it in the white, I rolled it in the paint, and now I'm coming around just to make the edge. It's a clean edge, but you can see how much it adds to the look of the petal in contrast to the places that you don't see the detail. Because I have the white on my brush now, I'm gonna go on in and put the highlights that I need. I'm using the width of the brush, I'm laying in the white where I want them to go. And all this is in conjunction with the brush strokes that I laid in a while ago to make sure that they were all following that same path, that same pattern, that same direction. Okay, so now that I have those few done so that you can see what's gonna happen, we'll move on. I'll start with this one. You can see that it's one of the larger areas that are cupped over towards the center. So I'm gonna go back and start with the area that's a little bit darker first. I'm just gonna come in with the toe of my brush and make a shape that starts in the middle and it comes out and then it goes back around, and it does that on both sides. So I'm coming out and around and then back, and you can see how I'm actually showing how the petal is actually cupped toward the center. So now as soon as I have the dark in, I'm gonna go back in and pick up the light again, and then this will be the lighter area here against the dark. So with the white, I'm just beginning to lighten up that, and while it's wet, you just blend it. Now remember this one, if you'll watch and see, if you'll look at the petal and know what direction it's coming from, it's coming from here and going out. So that's the direction I'm painting it. I'm going from here, the outside, to the inside. And that's exactly the way that that petal is opening or growing, or the way it's made. So that's what we're looking for, that direction. Now the other part is the widest part that goes in between. It's that part that sits out on the outside edge. So once again with that, I'll have to add the white. So I'm gonna wash out the brush, gonna just tap it off a little bit from the paper towel. I don't want it to have too much water on it, but I am gonna just pick up the white. I do want it to flow, so I left enough of the water on there when I mixed it together that once I put this fine line on there, I'm just using the toe of the brush, you can see how you can outline it. But it goes up and down and around, and that really makes it come out away from the inside that's darker along that area. Now, once I do that, it shows me that this area is flat because it's too much of the same color. I need a little bit of gradation in there going from the darker purple to the lighter purple. So in this area, I'm gonna go in and put just a little bit more of the light right in the center. So now I have it set up where I think it looks like it's going right around. It's coming outside, going up and turning around. And that's exactly what we're looking for. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back over here and we'll continue our journey. We have about half of the flower done now. The top half is a little bit bluer than it is purple, so that's why I chose to do it in two different sections. This has more of the cerulean blue in it than it does the violet. So that's what we'll do, of course, on our palette. We'll change over and have a little bit more of the blue coming in. This one is coming from behind or up underneath that area. So I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna use the whole width of the brush to actually come from the inside of the flower to the outside of the flower. And because of the way I picked up the paint and layered it on, you can see every little brush stroke shows, and it looks like it's a part of actually the petal, which is a good thing. I'm adding a little bit more white on now, as you can see, lightening up the outside. So from the outside to the inside, it does get lighter. So I'm adding more and more of the white. Remember, you can add as much paint and you can have it as thick as you want to. If you like it pretty gloppy, you can just pick up a whole bunch of paint and just lay it down and leave it. But the basic thing we're looking for is to make sure that we have this darker up underneath here just a little bit. So I picked up a little bit more of the violet and added it right in that center area so that we go from the outside, the underneath part, and then we go out and we get darker and medium, and then we get lighter. And so that's one very simple way to make that petal work just the way it needs to. Okay, so now I'm going to the next one, and I'm picking up a little bit more of the cerulean blue to make it a little bit darker, because I want this to look like it is behind that. And of course the darkness will do that. So I'm picking up more of the cerulean blue. It's a thin little line that runs up this direction. You can see how it goes all the way up around. So that's what we'll do here. We'll go all the way up and around. Just follow your edge, line of your drawing. And then you can tell that this is lighter on this side and lighter on that side. So we'll go that direction in just a minute. But first we want to get some of the purple or the violet to go right in. We want it to come from the inside of the flower to the middle section like this. So it's coming from the inside and it's coming and overlapping on that blue that we just made. So the blue's not quite as bright, but it is showy. So I'm just taking a little bit of the violet, laying it right on the blue cerulean color, and then we're all set to move to the next part. Now, the bottom part that comes right out of the flower does have a little bit more of the purple in it here, but then immediately after you get that little bit of color, the rest of it turns more of the cerulean blue color. So I'm gonna wipe off some of that purple and violet so that I can pick up more of the blue. So I'm gonna pick up blue. It does have a little bit of white mixed in it, but all this area in here is more blue-ish. So that's what I'm gonna go with. So this is the cerulean and white. So as I paint, I'm going this direction, making sure that the petal is formed exactly the way I want it to look. And each one of those become, of course, strokes. Brush strokes are fun to show. Some people keep them and some people fade them out, but in this particular painting, I really love keeping every little mark in there, so that's what I'll do. Gonna pick up a little bit more white and fan from the inside to the outside. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the violet that I picked up. I wanna make sure that both of those come together. So while the blue and the violet and the white are wet, I'm just using all of those, very little pressure. I'm just barely touching the paint and I'm letting it all go together as one unit, but every one of them turn into a different brush stroke of color. Okay, so now that I have the inside part of this one done, I'm gonna move on around and go do the next couple of petals, and then we'll come back to the white as we did before. So all of this section in here is gonna be violet. It does have some of the blue in it, and of course the white. So we'll use a combination of those colors to start filling in this section. The purple is a little intense, and the blue is a little intense. I'm just going zigzag, zigzag, sort of back and forth on the brush strokes to make those work. I'm gonna go up about 2/3 of the way, and then I will change over with some different colors. But right now, I wanna make sure we keep those pretty much on the medium side of the value chart. Going right around the edge. And now, I'm going to go right up underneath the edge because I want this to be the place where my white tips over and overlaps my dark. So if I can get a nice dark edge, I'm gonna go back to my cerulean blue and use this in this space so I can really get a sense of that blue being dominant on this underside. So just picking up a little bit of blue on the edge, on the toe of the brush, and then coming right in and tying that together with the purple that's on the inside. And every stroke goes in the same direction towards the center. Okay, so once that's done, then we're gonna go and form this outside part, and remember that's gonna be our lighter color. It's does have some darks a little bit on each side, so this is where you can see the edge and how it turns. And then we've got a little bit more on this side for the edge and how it turns. And then this is back sort of up underneath. So there's not a lot of light in there, but there's enough so that you can see the difference between the light here and the light up there. So that's what we always have to watch out for when we're doing something that's so subtle as one white petal. We've got to really understand where the lights are. So this is almost a light gray, but I did put some of the blue in it. So we'll add enough of the white in there to finish up the space, and you can see how I'm just adding a little bit of white and a little bit of pressure and just coming and making that almost scoop out right over the top of that edge. I'm doing the same thing all the way around. You can see a curve, it just scoops. Very light pressure, but right over where I painted to make the overlap and to make the edge. And I want this to be lighter along the edge, but it still has to have a little bit of the blue in the color coming right along that area. So we'll have to make sure that we get that in, because right above it, we're gonna change over and we'll go dark again. So once we have that built in, then we'll move on over, because this is the area that is mostly the cerulean blue. So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna start with the line or the edge and going from the outside to the inside like that. And then I'm gonna flip and do the opposite, and I'm gonna go this way, and they basically meet in the center. It's a lot of cerulean blue and a little bit of white. When I'm filling in the space, I can use the width of the brush and go back and forth like that. But then when I'm using the edge, I just need to turn it around and get the toe of the brush like this, so I can go up under there and form that edge. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll form the edge with just the toe of the brush like that. And now I have this part made. Now I need to work on the directions of the way it's growing, so I'm gonna pick up the white of the petal, and I'm coming out from the outside underneath, coming around, and you can see it just forms the direction of the growth that the petal needs to show right there. Now I've got another one coming up, and that's about half blue and half purple. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that one worked out. I'm going underneath, I'm following the edge of the petal with the edge of the brush, going up underneath, really shaping the way I want that petal to sit. And then I add the white and the blue in, and then I begin to blend that out from the inside of the petal to the outside, going from up underneath, just using the toe of the brush. Remember, this is back behind here, so this continues to be dark enough so it shows that this overlaps that. So I'm gonna go in and use the darkness and also the line of the brush to emphasize that area so that you can see that this is behind. And now I'm using every one of those brush strokes to back up and go in here. Now remember, we're not finished with any of, we're not finished with any of the painting, but we're not finished with this particular petal right now, because that outside edge, we will come back and use the final layer to show that this is on top of that with a brush stroke in a few minutes. So I'm just coming around right now and just shaping exactly the edge that I wanted to have. Okay, so I'm coming down and around now, and I've almost finished this petal. Just using the toe of the brush. Remember, you can always come back and put the brush into the water, and then take it and go, literally lay the water down into the paint, lay the brush flat down, flat, and just really push all the paint and water together onto the brush. And then you'll have a nice even line that you can sculpt with if you need to form a line. Okay, so let's put all the color we need to in here. We're gonna start out with the blue color that's already on my brush. And I'm gonna do edges once again. I'm gonna take that blue that's very important up underneath that area and push that under. And I'm going to do that with the dark blue paint, and I'm going to do it with actually using the edge of the brush so that you can see the line up against. We've got a dark line, and it's gonna be up against a white line, so that's definitely a contrast. Gonna bring the blue all the way down, and these two pretty much come out from the same place. Then I'll change over and go on the violet side, on this side a little bit. I'll just keep adding the violet paint and the white. And as I do that, then I'll have another petal that's just about formed. And you can see every brush stroke makes that petal turn the direction it needs to go. So this gets darker, and this gets darker. So every time I pick up a brush stroke, I'm going over and I'm going around. I'm doing the edge right there and coming out. Every brush stroke that I make shows the definition. So as I begin to come out like this, I'm taking the brush stroke and just moving it out in that way. Okay, so I'm gonna dip my brush in water again, and I'm going to come along this side so that I can finish up this section right in here. And remember, this last little section right here is gonna be the white part that goes all the way around. So we'll get, remember those whites right at the end, which we're just about ready for now. I'm gonna lighten up this area with the white. I've got all the colors on my brush, so if I just take the white and come in and literally just comb over each one of the colors, it will lighten them but give them a sort of glossy kind of look and really identify what that petal needs. Okay, so I'm gonna wipe off those colors with my paper towel, and I'm gonna wash out the brush so that I can begin to pick up some more of the white that I need to go around each one of the petals to show off those, and then we'll do the center of the flower. Okay, so now I'm gonna change over and use a smaller brush so that I can go in and paint the edges on the white spaces that move all the way around on every petal. So I'm picking up the white, I'm loading it on the brush, I am going around the edge here. You can see every petal is identified with an edge where it comes and cups and turns towards the center. So I'm using the toe of the brush. I'm coming in, making an edge that goes around. And I just continue doing that all the way for every flower where it's coming out. You can see how I go in and out and around. You've really got to sculpt out and make that shape. The shapes are important to this particular kind of magnolia. You gotta have that little dip and turn. Some of them will have to come back and put a little bit of blue or gray in. But right now with the smaller brush, I'm just forming the edges and then making the white white. And then I'll have at least all the canvas covered, and then I can play around with other colors wherever I need to. On these that I haven't painted, I am filling in the edges on both sides, the inside and the outside, and then connecting them around. Doing the same thing over here. I painted it a while ago, but I had the violet on my brush, so now I'm just adding a little bit of white right in the center, right along the edge to make sure it pops out. Doing the same thing here, adding white in the center and then blending it out towards the middle. I have the white on the edge and then I blend it out towards the center. I have the white on the edge and then I blend it out. You can see the repetition of that is very important. Same thing's gonna happen here. I have white around both edges, top and bottom. You can see it gives it detail. If you like detail, that's an easy way to get it to form. Let this one just run right off the page and come back and get it again when it comes back on the page. You can see it's got a corner. And then you can see this one has a ledge. We did a little bit of it a while ago. Now we're doing it again so that you can see the white even better. We're doing this again so you can see the white. If you just have white on your brush, it really shows up different than if you have all the other colors mixed in. A little bit of white on this edge. And then I think we've stated, make sure we get the curve coming up where we need to have it on that one. So now I think we have curves everywhere we need them. We have white everywhere we need it. So now we're gonna move in and work on the very center. We're gonna do that with the yellow and the burnt umber that we have on our brush. I'm just sort of mixing both of those together, like half and half. And literally I'm gonna take my brush and I'm going to, with half brown and half yellow, I'm gonna pat with this brush. It was a flat brush, so it's really easy if I'm capturing all the color as a individual color as we push them into this space. So basically, you put brown and yellow on the brush at the same time. And then because you've got your brush loaded and it's flat, if you push it down into the canvas, push it down, it creates a texture that actually looks like what you're trying to get for that pollen that's in the center area. But you don't do any movement after you do the push in if you like the look of the texture being up off of the canvas, so it actually lays there and you can see it raised. If you don't, then another technique would be just to do a scrub like this, and you don't have to have the peak standing up, you could just move them together, but you still need a separation of colors with the you still need a separation of colors with the brown and the yellow. The other thing you do next is you come in with the white and you lighten up some places just like we lightened up the white in there. And you do that by just taking the white on the edge or the corner of your brush and tapping, just a little tap in the corner. Once again, the brush can be, you can lay it down and it can be raised like that, or you can blend it in a little bit so that it's not actually raised up off of the canvas. But I like a lot of paint, so I like picking up a lot of paint, and I like leaving it so that you can see every little dot on there. So I'm just tapping and releasing the paint, and then tapping again. And then if we do that, you can see the texture is a really nice thing against all this flatness that you have on the petals. So I think it's a good idea, and I think it really works. Now I'm adding yellow by itself right on top of the white, and you can see how that really lightens it up on that side a good bit towards the center. And now you can see how the flower just pops out and really shows itself with the high contrast between the texture that's in here and the flatness that's on the petal. And of course, we know that yellow is the complement of purple, and so that really is a great color scheme for your painting. Now that you have finished your project, we want to see your masterpiece. Please send us a picture either to our email at artcenterofwilmingtonisland@gmail.com or post it to our Facebook page. Keep visiting our Facebook page and website to see the latest art at home kits. Thanks so much for supporting your neighborhood art studio.